Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder how a mother's brain changes when she holds her baby for the first time? Well, this new study dives deep into that amazing transition. Imagine going from not having a child to suddenly having one. Your brain is basically rewired to help you be the best parent you can be. Scientists have known for a while that looking at a baby, especially your own baby, really lights up a mother's brain. But what happens over time as you get more experienced as a mom? Does that intense connection stay the same, or does it evolve? That is the big question the study tackled. So, what did they do? They used a really cool brain scanning technology called magnetoencephalography, or MEG. Think of it like a super sensitive helmet that can detect the tiny magnetic fields your brain produces when it is active. They had 16 first-time mothers come into the lab twice. The first time was when their babies were pretty young, around 5 to 9 months old. Then, they came back about 6 months later when the babies were older, around 10 to 16 months. While wearing the MEG helmet, the moms looked at pictures. They saw photos of their own baby, a baby they didn't know, and an adult woman they didn't know. They did this at both visits. By comparing how their brains reacted to these different faces across 2 different time points, they could see how things changed as the moms got more experience. They were looking at a few different brain signals. First, early brain activity in a part of the brain called the orbitofrontal cortex, which is involved in how we value things and make decisions. Then they looked at something called the M170, which is an early sign that the brain is recognizing a face, like its structure. And finally, they focused on something called the late positive potential, or LPP, which happens a bit later and is thought to show how much our attention is grabbed by something important or emotional. This is where it gets really interesting. They found that in the early months, when moms looked at their own baby's face, their brains showed a really strong response, especially in areas related to attention and motivation. This was particularly clear in the LPP signal. It was like their brains were saying, "Wow, this is important, pay attention." But here is the twist. When they went back 6 months later, that heightened attention response to their own baby had decreased. It wasn't gone, but it was no longer significantly stronger than their response to an unfamiliar baby or an adult. It was as if that supercharged attention signal had mellowed out, becoming more in line with how they responded to other faces. Think about it this way. In the beginning, a mom's brain is on high alert, intensely focused on her infant. This makes sense evolutionarily, right? You need to be super attentive to keep your baby safe and healthy. But as she becomes more comfortable and experienced, that intense need for constant heightened attention seems to adapt. Her brain doesn't need to crank up the alarm system as loudly anymore. What is also fascinating is that the earlier brain responses, the ones related to just recognizing a face, and some early valuing processes in the orbitofrontal cortex, didn't change much. They were pretty consistent no matter whose face they were looking at or when the scan was taken. This suggests that the actual ability to see and initially process a face, and maybe even a basic sense of liking it, stays fairly constant. The change happens more in the later stages of motivation and attention. This study is unique because it is longitudinal, meaning they followed the same people over time. Most studies are like snapshots, looking at different groups of people at one point. This study actually shows a change happening within the mothers themselves as they gain more experience. It is like seeing a plant grow instead of just looking at photos of plants at different ages. So, what does this adaptation mean? It is likely a good thing. It suggests that mothers become more efficient. They've learned to recognize their baby's needs quickly without needing that constant, super high alert. It's like becoming a seasoned professional at something. You don't have to stress as much. This efficient response is probably what helps mothers manage the demands of parenting over the long haul. The researchers also noted that certain brain areas, like the fusiform gyrus, which is super important for facial recognition, showed this pattern most clearly. This area seems particularly sensitive to baby faces, and that special connection a mother has. It is where the brain processes what makes a baby's face unique and important. Scroll limitation. Several limitations should be considered when interpreting the present findings. Scroll now. No study is perfect, and the researchers were upfront about their limitations. One thing is that the baby's ages varied a bit at the start. This makes it a little tricky to say for sure if it is just about gaining more parenting experience or if it is also about the baby getting older and changing. They did find that infant age didn't seem to hugely change the results, but they also said their study wasn't perfectly set up to detect small age effects. So future studies could look at this more closely. Another point is that they used the same photo of each mom's baby for both sessions. This was to make sure they weren't seeing changes just because the baby looked different in the second photo. But they admit it is possible that looking at an older photo of your baby might feel a bit different than looking at your baby right now. Future research might compare photos from different time points. They also only use neutral baby and adult faces. This helps keep things consistent, but they wonder if their findings would be the same if the babies were smiling or crying, which are very emotional cues that might engage the brain differently. So, to wrap it all up, this research gives us a really cool look inside the mother's brain. It shows that the intense, almost alert, like attention mothers have for their own babies in the early month, is a dynamic thing. It naturally tunes down over time as they gain experience, becoming more efficient while the fundamental processing of faces remains stable. It is a beautiful example of how our brains adapt and learn to navigate the profound experience of parenthood. And good news, the authors reported no conflicts of interest in this research. It is all about understanding the science. If you are curious to dive even deeper, the researchers have made their data publicly available online, which is a fantastic move for scientific transparency. What I find most compelling here is the idea of how our brains learn and adapt to big life changes. We see that intense initial response as a protective mechanism, and then the brain smartly recalibrates. It makes you think about other areas of our lives where we might have an initial intense reaction that smooths out with practice and experience. What do you guys think about these findings? Does this resonate with your own experiences or observations? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science stories. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the wonders of the mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.